he has those weeks where he puts up 2 to 3 receptions. If they're winning and they're running the ball, he doesn't really get involved. And then he has some spike weeks.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks. I'm Jason, he's Vaz, and today we continue on with our redraft rankings for the upcoming season, and today we're looking at tight ends. Once again, though, before we go into our list, let me tell you about our Best Ball League that we are setting up for you this season. It's easy to join. All you have to do is make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and that you comment on this video. Let us know that you want to be in our league, and we are going to have a 14-team league with 12 of you joining the 2 of us. The winner will get a free entry into a $20 entry league into a redraft tournament next season, which will also be under a best ball format. And remember, if we just have 12 people, hey, all of you guys are in. But if we have more than 12 people that want to be in the league, then we're going to have to do a raffle of some sort. So the number of times that you guys comment on our videos, or for each video that you comment on, will enter you each time into the raffle. So the more you comment on each video, then the better chance you have of ensuring that you are a part of our league. So get in on that, and we would love for you to join us in our listeners league. Let's then get into our tight end rankings. These are the redraft rankings for the 24 season that I have put together, and Vaz will kind of nitpick what he doesn't like about my list. And remember, you can comment as well, so join us in the comments section. Let's start with the number 1 ranked tight end that I have in a tier of his own. I think there's no doubt that Sam LaPorta, whether it be Dynasty or Redraft, either way, I think he's still the number 1 guy and still in a tier of his own. No disagreement there, right, Vaz?
No, but I think it's a lot closer than just he's the one and that's it. I think because we'll get into it more later, but I think in Dynasty, clearly he's the one.
Yes.
But I think, there's in Detroit, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of good players in that offense, right? So, I would not be surprised at all if Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce and finished as a tight end 1.
Yep. No, I hear you. And absolutely. I think the gap between Dynasty and Redraft is certainly bigger. So he's a bigger tier of his own when it comes to Dynasty. But in Redraft, I still have him in a tier of his own, but it's still, the gap is much smaller, certainly, than had it been Dynasty. My next tier includes Travis Kelce along with Mark Andrews and Evan Engram. I noticed when I asked you about that, you mentioned you wouldn't be surprised if Kelce or Andrews finished as the tight end 1. You did not say Engram, and I know that you have never been very high on him, so I'm guessing that you do not like him in this tier with the 2 of them. But if my question then would be, is there anyone else that you would put in the tier with Kelce and Andrews, or would you leave that as a 2-man tier?
So I am okay with Evan Engram in this tier if you're playing in a PPR format. I think if it's a half PPR format, then I certainly do not like him here. But in a PPR format, I'm okay with it. I think it's very possible he does lose some work because they brought in that rookie receiver, right? But I'm okay with it. For a PPR format, I'm okay with it, but he would clearly be at the bottom of my tier. And to answer the second part of your question, I would actually probably have Trey McBride in this tier as well. I think he finished so strong last season, and I think he's the clear number 2 option there for Kyler Murray. So I would also have Trey McBride in this tier above Evan Engram.
Okay, there you go. And speaking of, let's talk about that next tier. I've got it as George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, and then Jake Ferguson at the bottom of the tier. For me, in this group, I've got this tier pretty close. The only guy that is clearly at the bottom of the tier is Jake Ferguson for me, but I'm kind of okay if you mix up everyone else in whatever order you like. I like George Kittle there because Kittle has never finished lower than 5th in tight end rankings when he plays a full season. He's only finished tight end 2 once, which is why he's not in the tier above. But in terms of his floor, I think Kittle's got the best floor, which is why he's at the top of that tier. But certainly everyone else in that tier, I think, has the capability of being a top 5 tight end. I think Ferguson's the only guy that you would not expect to ever be a top 5 tight end in a given season. Your thoughts on this tier?
Sure. Actually, before I mention this tier, I would like to say one more thing about your previous tier, and that's Mark Andrews. I would have Mark Andrews perhaps even in the first tier. I'm really high on him. I think he can very, very easily be the tight end one in fantasy football next season. But I won't go into much more detail. I just wanted to mention that. And then in terms of this tier, I would definitely have Dalton, Kincaid, and Trey McBride at the top of this tier above George Kittle. You said you think George Kittle has a safe floor, but I think week to week Kittle's floor kind of is maddening for fantasy owners. He has those weeks where he puts up 2 to 3 receptions. If they're winning and they're running the ball, he doesn't really get involved, and then he has some spike weeks. So he's a little bit of a difficult start for me at tight end. I know, of course, if you have Kittle, you start him at tight end with pretty much with ease because there's not really a better option, but it is a little bit frustrating to have him on your roster. So I would prefer to have McBride or Kincaid or possibly even Pitts, believe it or not, just because of his upside. And then also, I would actually move Brock Bowers to the bottom of this tier or even to the next tier. I am
Ferguson.
a little bit. Yeah, I just think Ferguson has a good rapport with Dak.
Yeah.
So I like his kind of floor for next season, whereas Brock Bowers has got some question marks with that quarterback room, and then with Michael Mayer there as well. You don't know how much work he'll get, and then Devontae Adams is there, and I just don't know how many targets Brock Bowers will get, how many good opportunities Brock Bowers will get in the red zone as well. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. So I think I would move Brock Bowers down probably to the next tier. And then, I would have Kincaid and McBride at the top of this tier.
Okay. Next tier, speaking of which, then is for me, Cole Kmet, David Njoku, Hockenson, Goedert, Taysom Hill, Dalton Schultz, Freiermuth, and Musgrave. I know that Hockenson is your best buddy.
Yeah, he's my boy.
Probably be in your tier 1 or 2 had he been healthy. But here's the problem with him for me is we still don't know when, like, he doesn't have a projection of he's expected to be back in week 4 or week 6 or week 10, or there's literally nothing as of yet, as training camps are now about to start. So with that amount of uncertainty, I can't put him into the tight end 1 group, because I would hate for him to be the tight end that I'm counting on to, get me points week in, week out, and then end up not returning until week 8 or something, really crippling me for the start of the season because of that. But I guess it depends on how risk adverse you are, or if you're able to get one of the tight ends ahead of him on this list in one of the earlier tiers, then I'm okay taking him a little bit earlier as your second tight end because of the upside. But at the same time, I can't take him in front of anybody in the previous tier, certainly. And I'm taking him after even Kmet and Njoku in this tier.
Okay. I mean, like, I agree with you. He belongs in this tier without question, and it's painful for me to say that. But here, let me explain my thought process here. I'm going to move TJ Hockenson to the top of this tier, okay? Because when you get to this stage at the tight ends, it's like, bleh, it's puke, right? Like anything goes here. You don't know, what they're going to give you week to week, right? But with TJ Hockenson, when he's healthy, you're confident slotting him in your tight end slot, right? So I'm moving him to the top of this list because when it comes to fantasy playoffs, I want TJ Hockenson in my starting lineup, and I don't want any of these other guys in my starting lineup. So I'm definitely happy to take TJ Hockenson to the top of this tier, and I'm willing to put up with the fact that he's not going to give me production for the first 5-6 weeks. But because what really matters in fantasy is the playoffs, right? And I want him on my team for the playoffs. So he's moving to the top of my tier here, and then when I'm looking at this tier, there's one guy that really stands out for me, and that's Taysom Hill. I'm moving him out of this tier. I think he's the kind of guy that, with 1 or 2 weeks of no production, could be on the waiver wire, right? He could find himself with very little involvement in that offense. He's kind of a tight end dependent player. And I think in this tier of tight ends, you're not looking for tight end dependent tight ends. Sorry, TD dependent tight ends in this tier. You want guys that'll give you a little bit more consistent production. So I'm definitely moving Taysom out of this tier. And I think I'm moving Dalton Schultz to the end of this tier as well. I think there's too much target competition in that offense. And then I like Pat Freiermuth and Luke Musgrave at the start of the season as well. So I think for me, I would love to take a TJ Hockenson in this tier and then pair him with like a Luke Musgrave, because I think Luke Musgrave could have a good start to the season with the injury to his fellow tight end partner there in Green Bay. So I think pairing a couple tight ends like that could be a good recipe for success.
Yeah. Tucker Kraft, I think,
Yeah,
you're talking about. The one thing I'll say with Hockenson, if you're going to take Hockenson ahead of Kmet or Njoku, the only thing I would say is when you take Hockenson with my very next pick, I'm probably taking another tight end just to make sure that I have, the highest guy after him on my list. You mentioned Musgrave. Like, I want to make sure that I've got somebody else within this tier on my team if Hockenson is my tight end one. The guys on this list right now in this tier, this is literally about it when it comes to who do I want on my team as a tight. Like, these are guys, this is the end of the line of who I'd be comfortable starting. So my final tier becomes everyone else that you could draft, but you don't want them to be the first tight end on your team. These are kind of guys that you're going to take as, hoping that they become something that you can move later on, or you're fitting them in as a bye week guy. So the remaining guys, I've got Zach Ertz, Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki, Michael Mayer, Cade Otton, Tucker Kraft, Juwon Johnson, Isaiah Likely, Ben Sinnott, Jatavian Sanders, Hunter Henry, Ty Conklin, Okonkwo, and Tyler Higbee. So these are guys that, the last remaining guys that I think could be significant. They're not necessarily guys that I want on my team. I certainly don't want more than 2 tight ends on my team. So, like, you got your starter, one of these guys maybe as a backup. And yeah, you don't want to take one of these guys as a third guy on your team, as an example for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you here. I think all these guys are potentially waiver wire.
Yeah.
They're all like, they're guys you could probably cut off your team if you want to add somebody from the wire, basically. I would just say that I agree with your list here. I would just move Taysom Hill into this tier as well. I'm not as high on him as you are. But then, like, there's the thing, like, for example, let's say you draft like Luke Musgrave. Maybe you want to pair him with Tucker Kraft just to keep yourself safe in case one does experience an injury, right? So you could think about like doing something like handcuffs, for example. If you grab Brock Bowers, maybe you grab Michael Mayer. I don't love handcuffing tight ends because you don't win championships by handcuffing tight ends, but it's just an option for you. Like, maybe if you spend a high pick on Mark Andrews, maybe you grab Isaiah Likely, who's looked really good when Mark Andrews has been hurt. And, Mark Andrews has had an injury history. So maybe doing something like that is an option for you. I would just mention that.
Okay. There you have it. That is my list of tight ends for the 2024 season in redraft leagues. Let us know what you think. Who do you agree with? Who would you have higher on this list? Who would you have lower? And of course, your comments will enter you into our raffle to ensure a spot in our best ball league coming up for the upcoming season as well. So make sure you comment, like the video, and make sure that you're subscribed to the channel as well. And we'll see you next time for another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks.
Peace.